everyone. Welcome to the Top 1% Sellers Academy webinar series. Our guest today is an amazing sales coaching expert, Keith Rosen, and you may have already seen his book entitled Coaching Salespeople into Sales Champions, and he has an amazing and an abundant resources on his websites, which we will talk about, and he also is working on a new book called Coachquest. We'll actually have a chance to talk about that. And he recently also published a book called Own Your Day, which will also pull into our conversation today. Keith, I'm very excited to have you with us today.
Thank you, Ash. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much. And I just want to let everybody who's watching us and listening to us that Keith's webinar and a lot more content is going to be available for top sellers who want to become top 1% sellers. When you go to the Top 1% Sellers Academy, you're actually going to listen in to a lot more content from Keith and from other sales experts, and you're going to be tapping into an amazing resource that will help you really raise your game and be one of those top 1% sellers at the President's Club, at the Chairman's Club, on the stage, really taking in the rewards and recognition that you deserve for becoming a top 1% seller. So with that, I will actually close the this screen share, and we'll go into the conversation here with Keith. Keith, again, welcome.
Thank you, Ash.
Thank you. So one of the things that I just based on my research for our conversation, I heard you talk at Salesforce, and you basically said to everybody who's listening to you from the stage, you basically said to them that a lot of sales managers are coaching in their own image. Mm-hmm. And it made me pause. And I wonder what you meant, and if you could share with our audience, what does that mean?
You are starting right off strong, Ash. I have to tell you, this is a juicy conversation. So when I say managers and leaders are coaching in their own image, and let's even transcend that to salespeople selling in their own image. What that really means is you are taking your experience, your belief system, how you perceive things should be done, and you're taking that and you're putting on someone else. So it's basically your agenda. So for example, if I'm a sales manager and you're one of my direct reports, you might come to me with a problem. And I'm sitting there and I'm listening. And after I listen to you, I'm going to say something like, okay, Ash, I'm going to put my coaching hat on.
Yes.
This isn't coaching. And then they're going to say, here's what you should do. That's not coaching. And what's going to follow that is, well, when I was in your position, this is how I handled it. So you should do this as well. So that's coaching in your own image. You're not honoring the other person's individuality. Yes. What you're doing is you're really just building mini-me's. You're building robots, and you're not tapping into any of their creativity ideas and allowing them to self-reflect and self-actualize so they can grow themselves.
Yes.
So when you start coaching in your own image, you're really what I call shoulding on people, S-H-O-U-L-D-I-N-G, in case anyone heard that differently. Yes. And a should is basically the excrement of your own agenda.
Yes, that's fascinating. I thought it really summarized what a lot of sales managers will tend to do, right? Almost like the default setting would be to immediately get into coaching in their own image. And I think that opens up the conversation. And I mean, people listening in are sales professionals, they're account managers, and some are sales leaders. And I think what we would do in the conversation is we're going to arm each one of them to kind of help the other one in this process, help them out as best as possible. So we'll start off by looking at, when you're thinking about that sales manager, then really you're basically telling him or her, you need to watch out for your default setting, that's where your comfort zone is going to be, right? So as that sales manager steps back, and thinks about the coaching process, how should they think about it differently in order to make sure they succeed?
What's showing up for me is probably one of the most fundamental shifts managers need to make. Yeah. And I have a lot of mantras and universal principles when it comes to coaching. one universal principle that I share with leaders, it's actually very simple. You need to make a shift from leading with answers to leading with questions.
Yes.
Now, that sounds like it makes sense, but of course, managers will say, Keith, okay, get it. How do I do it?
Yes.
And to me, there's two components when you're developing people. It doesn't matter if it's salespeople, operations, another department, leaders. And when you're developing people, it's not just about one-way direction. Hey, this is what you need to do. Again, that's going back to coaching in your own image. Yes. So when you're talking about evolution and you're talking about probably the number one barrier, again, there's what you do and who you are. You can't just change one, because if you're only changing what you do and you're not changing who you are, you're only developing half the champion you can be.
Yes.
So one of the inner games of coaching, which to me is taking the very holistic approach, because between you and me and about 100,000 people right now, I don't like the word training, okay? I'm all about transformation, transforming people from where they are today to where they need to be tomorrow, because that is what sticks. So to bring this back to one of the most core universal principles of coaching has to do with being the chief problem solver.
Yes. Yes.
So, of course, I ask this very rhetorical question anytime I'm working with a team of managers, and I'll say, just by a show of hands, how many of you, and I know this is going to sound absolutely crazy, Mr. and Mrs. Manager, how many of you have ever been in a situation where your people come to you, your directs come to you, and they say, boss, I need your help. And you're sitting there probably in the middle of something, and you're thinking, okay, I got to support my people, really need to get back to this. Let me just tell them what to do. And of course, I'm sure no manager ever does that, right? My sarcasm is translating.
Yes.
So what winds up happening is, and here's one of those other paradoxes in leadership, which is managers and leaders are actually creating the very problems they want to avoid. And when I give managers, when we're in a room for 2 days, it's really a gift that you give your people, because they don't often have that opportunity to self-reflect on themselves, to ask, am I really where I want to be as a salesperson? Am I really where I want to be as a sales leader? Yeah. So when we talk about this, it gives them that space to reflect. And I walk them through this conversation and I say, okay, chief problem solver, you're basically out there solving everyone's problems. I can't remember a time, after literally working with hundreds of thousands of managers and salespeople globally, where a manager has told me, oh, Keith, I never do that.
Yes.
It's always, yeah, I'm guilty of that.
Yes.
So I walk them through what happens, because right now they're so myopic. They're thinking, okay, I got to solve this now, but they're not thinking about what culture they're creating on their team. So exactly. let's fast forward this. If you come to me as a direct and say, Keith, I need your help, and I give you an answer, think about that underlying message I'm sending. So the underlying message I'm sending, I'm already setting a precedent, which is, hey, Ash, anytime you have a problem, just come to me. Exactly. I got your back. I'll fix it for you.
Yes.
So basically, again, managers creating the very problems they want to avoid. I have yet to run into a manager who doesn't want to develop a team of independent, accountable, high performers.
Yes.
Well, wait a second. I just set the precedent where every time one of my directs comes to me, I give the answer. That's what they're going to expect every single time. Absolutely. So the irony, the costly irony, is I'm not scaling. I'm actually creating a team of people dependent on me.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then the additional cost is, so if I give you a solution to act on, and you go out and you execute on it, and it fails.
Right. You told me so.
You got it, buddy. Then you get. Hey, boss, my hands are clean on this one.
Exactly.
You told me what to do. This wasn't my idea. This was yours. It's not my fault. It's yours. So the real kicker here is managers are robbing people of the very accountability they want to instill in them.
Exactly.
Because once a manager solves the problem, guess what? They shifted the problem from their direct right here onto their shoulders. Now it's their problem.
Yes. And the awkward position for a lot of sales professionals listening in, if that's the profile of the manager, how do you want them to manage that manager? What would you advise them of doing?
The salesperson?
Yes.
Oh, awesome. So I've worked on an ebook, which people can download on my website on Coachquest.com, and it's free. It's called Coach Up. And all of the books that I've ever written, they surface after working with my clients and hearing the same themes over and over and over again. And I would say, clearly I need to write about this because this is impacting everyone on a global scale.
You see it happening again and again.
Oh yeah. So this is really an opportunity to coach up. And by the way, that's not just limited to the salesperson to their frontline manager. That's the frontline manager to their boss, to their boss, to their boss, all the way up. You can coach up. So when a salesperson is not getting the coaching, and I believe that's your question, they're not getting the support of the coaching they need. Exactly. Sometimes it's really uncomfortable for a direct report to go to their boss and say, hey, you kind of suck as a manager. You need to change, okay? That's not going to fly.
Right, exactly.
What we need to do, and this is a concept that I write about in my coaching book, is we need to enroll people. And enrollment is a universal phenomenon. If you think of the greatest leaders in the world, one thing that they had in common was their ability to connect, to engage, and to enroll people in their cause. And often their cause is much bigger than them. It could be world peace, eradicating hunger, equality. These things are bigger than them. Yeah. And when they share their message to the world, it's going to resonate with tens, if not hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. They've enrolled them in that greater cause. So now we're going to take that concept, we're going to bake it down and how that can be applied in the business world. You see, when managers and even salespeople, if a salesperson is talking to a prospect or a customer, if a manager is talking to a direct report,
yes.
If I do not tell you what my intentions are in that conversation, the human condition defaults to fear. So I'll give you a perfect example. Yeah. And again, since you're right in front of me, Ash, I'm going to keep using you as my example, okay? So you're the direct report. I'm your boss. I shoot you an email. You open you see in your inbox, and in the subject line, it says, call me ASAP.
Yes.
What's your first reaction?
My God, did I do something wrong?
Exactly. Uh-oh, am I in trouble? Am I going to lose my job? Are they putting me on a performance improvement plan? Where did I mess up?
Exactly.
The fear. And then, of course, they follow up with their manager, and the manager says, hey, listen, I just wanted to follow up with you. I saw you turned in that other deal. Just want to say congratulations, job well done.
Yes.
And the salesperson sitting there saying, that's it?
Yeah.
That's it? Yeah, that's it. And it's interesting because the human condition doesn't default to pleasure. So if I sent you that same email that says, hey, call me ASAP, direct reports don't respond with, oh, this is going to be awesome. My manager's going to praise me and tell me how amazing I am. Not the default. Exactly. So that's why when you talk about enrollment, it's about setting intention, setting expectations, and creating alignment.
Yes.
And that is probably one of the reasons why coaching will be very successful. Observation, tapping into people's individuality, all the things that we can do a deeper dive on. Yes. But also conversely, it's why coaching will fail. It's why managers will erode trust with their people. Because if their people don't know what the manager's intentions are, they're going to make up the whole stories in their head. Oh, this is about my manager. He or she needs to hit their number. They don't really care about me.
Exactly. Because
the manager never set the intention. And the most critical part of enrollment is this. Listen, here's what we're doing. And that's what managers pretty much stop right there. Yeah. Okay, we have a new initiative. Here's what we're doing. Okay, guys, go do it. Yeah. And then they wonder why people aren't doing it, or why, Keith, I don't understand. We just rolled out the CRM. I don't understand why everyone's resisting doing it. Exactly. And then, of course, I asked, well, how'd you roll it out? Well, we said, hey, this is our new CRM. Here's the training. Now go use it.
Yes.
No enrollment, because they stop at this is what we're doing. To continue that conversation, it's here's what we're doing. Here's why we're doing it.
Yes.
What's the why in every conversation, even when you're coaching and selling? What's the why?
Yes.
And most important, here's what's in it for you.
Mm-hmm.
So if I don't connect what we're doing with the benefit for you to create that alignment,
yes,
people are going to resist.
And it's
but when people When people see the value, that's when you've aligned, here's the business objectives, here's people's personal goals. When it's focused towards a shared vision and a shared goal, that's when you create extraordinary performers.
Absolutely. And it's so simple and disarming at the same time, but so critical. And I'd love you to go back to that subject line. How would you change? Because a lot of sales managers are like, chop, chop, chop. They're trying to get things done. And they may write that message, right? Thinking nothing is wrong, but it creates that human condition, as you said. How would you recraft that subject line?
So I actually spent a lot of time on phraseology and coaching it. The message, occupational hazard, I guess, being an author.
Exactly.
So people don't realize how important the subject line is. And that includes prospecting as well, if you want your emails open. Otherwise, people are going to look at it and just delete it because you're competing about 500 emails a day with some people.
Yes.
So subject line could be as simple as shifting from, hey, call me ASAP to want to talk to you about your success on this deal.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
So now the direct reports look and say, oh, I get it. I understand their intention. They were clear. I see what's in it for me. Can't wait to speak to my leader.
Yes, that's fantastic. Yeah. That way they're not wondering, to your point, and just they can spin wheels and maybe even lose a lot of productivity that way.
Oh my gosh, Ash, spot on with that. And because what are they doing? They're sitting there putting meaning on everything. Well, what does my boss mean? Next thing you know, an hour passed by. That's an hour productivity that they just lost.
Exactly.
So we're aligned. And it's interesting because if you take it from the written communication and you bring it to face-to-face. And of course, I know a lot of managers that manage a virtual team or a remote team, which, by the way, let me just put this one to bed. Everything that you could do in person coaching, you can do on the phone.
Yes.
I'm the poster child for that.
Yeah.
30 years, 99% of all my one-on-one coaching clients on the phone.
It's on the phone. Yeah,
exactly. So it applies, just making sure everyone hears that. It applies to phone coaching as well as face-to-face. So let's say you and I are coaching face-to-face.
Yeah.
And a couple of days pass and I want to follow up with you. So there you are, you're sitting at your desk. Now I walk up to you.
Yeah.
And I say, hey, got a minute? Now, when was the last time a direct report turned to their manager and said, nope, got no time for you, boss?
Exactly.
So what are they going to do? They're going to say, oh, yeah, sure, for you, I have all the time in the world.
Yes.
The problem is the manager is not taking into account what that salesperson was doing at the time they just interrupted them.
Yeah.
What happens if that salesperson just lost a big deal? What happens if they're having just a bad day or they got into a fight with their spouse or significant other?
Right.
What happens if they're dealing with a high pressure situation where they're on a deadline and they have to get a proposal out or follow up with a customer? And there you are, the boss, totally interrupting them and throwing them off their schedule.
Yes.
And even if you're a leader and you have to have an important conversation with someone, do you think they're going to be engaged? Do you think they're really going to be present? They're thinking about the stuff that you just interrupted them on that they need to go back and do.
Exactly.
So it's such a simple strategy where a manager, to respect someone else's time, is walk up to that person and say, hey, Ash, do you have a couple of minutes? I'd love to talk to you about a couple of things I've noticed that we can work on that will make you more successful. Do you have a couple of minutes now to talk about that, or are you in the middle of something?
Yes.
So notice what I did. A couple of things here. Number one, I didn't just say we have to talk now.
Yes.
I gave him the out. I said, you know what, boss? Let me finish this. I have to get this email out, or I have a meeting in 20 minutes I have to prepare for. Can we talk later in the afternoon?
Yes.
Of course, it's great. You respected their time. The other thing I did was I also let them know what I wanted to talk to them about.
Exactly.
Because if I just say, hey, you got a minute, or you're in the middle of something, and they say, I'm in the middle of something, and then you say, well, can we talk later? And they say, sure. They're going to spend the rest of the day trying to figure out what is my.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a very good point. That's
that
very
fear kicks in again.
Absolutely. And that's a fantastic segue for us, Keith, because what I'd love to do in our next portion here is to really unpack the coaching conversation for managers who may still think, you know what, it's much easier for me to just tell them what to do, or easier for me to solve the problem for them. And I'd love for them kind of listening into you. And I know there are some videos of you actually really demonstrating how that happens. And I would love for people to go on YouTube and watch some of those examples, because I think that's phenomenal that you've done some of these interviews these are live coaching interviews. And I have an observation we'll share with the audience, but what I'd like you to first to kind of take them through. Here's, if you were to sit with me, here's what I would advise you, the mindset walking into that coaching conversation, and then how do you manage it, and what do you resist? There are some things that a manager needs to resist, and I would love for you to tell them.
Okay, so you just triple dipped on me there, Ash. There's 3 awesome questions. Yeah. So if I get a senior moment because I'm getting old, just remind me if I forget to answer it, okay?
Absolutely.
So let's start off with the first one, the coaching conversation.
Yes.
And so we'll talk strategy and then we'll talk inner game because I think that's what you asked.
Yeah, exactly, yes.
So strategy-wise, there's a few things that need to happen. And again, I wish we had 4 hours for this, but at a very high level view, people need a coaching framework. Now, I've created a framework called the LEADS Coaching Framework, LEADS. It's in my book, Coaching Salespeople into Sales Champions. Yes. The revised version is going to be in my next book, but it's a framework. It gives people the structure and the questions to help navigate a coaching conversation.
Yes.
So there's the framework. And that framework has been adopted. I was just talking to my chief client officer, and he was looking at our stats, and he was saying, Keith, I think maybe like 25 to 3,000 Fortune 5,000 companies are using your framework.
Wow,
that's pretty cool. Wait till they see the new one.
Yes.
And so what that does is it doesn't allow the manager to go all over the place. So managers tell me, Keith, your framework makes sense. It's logical. First I need to learn what's going on. What's their intention? Then I need to enroll them. Are they open to being coached?
Yes.
Then I need to assess. So what's going on? What are the facts? Because again, if managers don't do this, they're assuming. So you're either assessing by asking questions or you're making some wicked costly assumptions.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
So LEA, assess. D, discuss. D is about getting to the why. So A is about what's going on. Yes. D is about why is this happening? What's the root cause? Yeah. And the last part is support. And support, I always apologize to managers. The S doesn't stand for giving a solution.
Right.
It stands for support. And support is about turning to that person and pulling out the solution from them rather than telling them what to do.
Yes.
It could sound as simple as, so Ash, what's your opinion on how to move forward here?
Right.
And then it's from there, hey, okay, so what are your action steps? When should we reconnect to discuss how that turned out? Yes. How can I be a better coach for you next time? So those last few questions, again, builds that momentum to the next coaching session, builds the accountability of what the salesperson's willing to commit to, and also allows me to take the pulse of my coaching because everyone's an individual and everyone wants to be coached a little differently.
Exactly.
So that framework really helps managers grasp on to the fundamentals of coaching, and then ultimately they could build on it. So a quick analogy is, it doesn't matter what sport you play. So take soccer. The greatest athletes in the world, if they're soccer players, every soccer player first learns the fundamentals.
Yes.
The baseline, best practices.
Yes.
But from there, as they grow as a player, they develop their own style.
Yes, that's true.
What I tell managers is, listen, this is the baseline. You need this. These are the best practices. From here, you're going to start making a shift from coaching from your head because it's new,
right,
to shifting to coaching from your heart. And heart-centered coaching is the most powerful coaching you can do because now it's part of your DNA. It's just who you are and how you show up.
Absolutely. And how do you, again, kind of going back to how we started the conversation, this whole idea about coaching in their own image, I think, and to your point, assumptions is a big topic you talk about. How do they manage against both of those items? I think is a big part of what you preach.
It's assumptions is one of my favorite topics because people don't realize how many hundreds of assumptions they're making every single day.
Yes.
So I'll give you a quick example. Working with one client in particular, I'm thinking about. He told me during my 2-day leadership program, he said, Keith, and pretty much is the same comment to managers. I can't even ask the question, how many of you do observation? Because when I ask that question, everyone goes like this. So I have to change the question to, does everyone agree they could be doing more observation? And of course, then every hand goes up.
Everybody is the hand, yeah.
So I remember this one manager, he said, Keith, I went out, I observed my direct report. And if I was to be honest, I haven't done it before. He's been on my team for 3 years. Yes. Hasn't been the greatest performer, which is why I wanted to go out and see how he's working with customers and how he's selling and positioning himself. So I'd go out there and I tried to do my best not to jump in. And we leave the meeting and I turned to him and I said, now I understand why you're not going to hit your numbers this quarter.
Interesting.
So number one, you think the salesperson's ever going to go ride with their manager again or go on a sales call with them? No, the manager just made them wrong.
Yes.
And the interesting thing about this is it's not the salesperson's fault. It's the manager's fault.
Yeah, you said for 3 years. Yeah.
I mean, it always blows my mind when I'm sitting with managers and I say, who is 100% accountable for the success and failure of your team? And managers will say, well, Keith, it's not 100%. It's kind of like 50-50 or 60-40 or no, it's 100%. Yeah. You are 100% accountable for the success and failure of your team. Yeah. So as a manager, I now I do understand because that is the fundamental principle, but it's always amazing to me how managers would share with me, I'm so frustrated with this one person on my team. Yeah. They're just not getting it. They're not doing it. They're not engaging in the activity. And it's making me crazy. So we have these conversations and it just gets heated and it gets into an argument and nothing gets done. And the manager's getting mad at their salesperson.
Yeah.
And I stopped the manager and said, well, wait a second.
Yeah.
Why do you think that salesperson is in the position they are in the first place?
Correct. Yeah.
Look in the mirror.
Yeah. Abrogation of duty.
And the manager's like, well, I guess if I observe them more, consistently, coach them more effectively, spend more time with them, I would be able to uncover the gaps in the developmental opportunities, which then I could support them so that I'm not shocked when I go out there and realize, oh my God, they don't even know how to sell.
Yes.
Manager's fault. But that's good news because it's in their power to change it.
Absolutely. And let's kind of turn it around slightly and empathize with that manager. Mm-hmm. And maybe then give them some tips on because coaching, it takes a lot of energy, to your point, right? There are a lot of systematic steps they need to take, the observation.
Initially. Yeah. To your point you said before, Ash, it's sort of like if you're right-handed,
yes,
I'm tying your right hand behind your back and forcing you to write left-handed.
Right.
You're going to feel really uncomfortable for a while.
Yes.
Until it becomes part of you.
Exactly. So I think this is terrific, and what we'll do in the next section is we'll actually talk a bit more about how you work with clients. So let's definitely kind of jump into sort of the last portion of our conversation today. Mm-hmm. It's been amazing, Keith. Thank you for being here. And for everybody watching, we're talking with Keith Rosen, an expert on sales coaching. And Keith, I'd love for us to tell the audience about Coachquest. I know there's a book coming with the same title. What's the inspiration behind Coachquest and the new point of view you have for people who are coaching their sales teams?
Thanks. Oh, great. And I hope did we answer those other 3 questions you hit me? I think there was an inner game that we talked about. Yes. Remind me to talk about detaching from the outcome.
Yes.
Because I think you asked me, what does a manager need to prepare in their mindset as well? So if you could just remember that, Ash, because I might have a senior moment and forget.
Exactly. Sure.
But in your last question, can you just ask me that in a different way again?
Oh, sure. I mean, the point of view you have in Coachquest, I definitely see that there's an evolution, even from the time you spoke at Salesforce and a number of other your conversation. I think now there's a conscious decision in your mind around Coachquest and even the whole sales approach, which I'd love to unveil to people because it's very intriguing to me.
Perfect. Thank you, Ash. Having been doing this for 30 years now and actually creating the niche of executive sales coaching and leadership coach development.
Yes.
And we'll talk about the seller coach in a few minutes. Having done this for 30 years and working, my marketing manager, this was a conversation we had a couple of years ago, he said, Keith, you're continually creating new content. The company's continually evolving. It's like, what's next? And I said to him, I said, it's my continued quest. And I stopped and I went into my memory bank and I said, wait a second.
Yeah.
I think I own a domain with that name in it. Let me go back. Of the 1,000 domains I own, don't get me started. It's a problem for me. Okay. And see, and I went back and I think it was over 10 years ago.
Yes.
I reserved Coachquest.com.
Yes.
And I go back and I look at this and I said, this is how we're rebranding Profit Builders. Coachquest. And it's the evolution of my company, because we are not a training company. As I said earlier, we're a transformation company. Yeah. We transform companies. We transform organizations. We transform cultures. And if I could just give a quick distinction of why I use that word transform.
Yes.
It's the difference between changing and transforming. When people change, they're just changing what they do. If you look this up, this is actually the definition. Yeah. Change is changing what you do. Yeah. If you look up the word transform, you're changing what you do, but you're also changing who you are and how you think.
The whole being.
And that whole holistic being, that whole process of transformation is what creates, the next generation of, champions.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think
that's really been the motivation for this book. And for me, it's this amazing quest and journey that I've been on that I invite everyone to come along with me. If you have a quest, a desire to better your best, to develop your team, to be the greatest leader or sales leader you can be, that's your quest.
Yes.
And it happens through coaching. So it was just a perfect combination.
Absolutely.
And we've launched it this year. So we're really excited about it.
Yes. And let's cover the inner game before we jump into the seller coach. Mm-hmm. Again, I think that the manager needs to resist a lot of default setting factors that are coming into the conversation. I mean, I watched you do this example coaching session, and you stuck to your process. You stuck to being the person that asks questions that leads them to the revelation. Mm-hmm. And I'd love for you to kind of share with managers listening in, how can they develop that ability to resist shifting into coaching in their own image?
Yeah, that chief problem solver role again.
Yes,
another distinction is coaching versus closing.
Yes.
And I always do this fun exercise with any client I'm working with, and it's one of the first exercises I do because that's how people learn, right? They learn by doing. Exactly. And I said, here's how this is going to work. Everyone pair up with someone. And one person plays the coach, one person plays the coachee. Coach, you can only facilitate that conversations using open-ended questions. You can't give the answer. You can't give your opinion.
Yes.
You can't agree or disagree. Okay?
Yes.
And of course, they're sitting there already, beginning to sweat because they know how hard that's going to be. And they realize afterwards how hard it is. This is all that default mechanisms. Yes. And the one part I say is, okay, everyone, you need to ask open-ended, non-loaded questions.
Yeah.
So then they go through the exercise and the simulation, and then we debrief. And then I'll go through the questions. So how many of you did not give a solution?
Yes.
No hands go up. How many of you shared your opinion? Every hand goes up. How many of you asked a loaded question? And for those of you who don't know what a loaded question is, it would sound something like this. Hey, Ash, don't you think it would be a good idea to follow up with the customer and share with them a compelling case as to why they should buy from us? Now, if I say that to a direct report, imagine their response. Oh, boss, I am so glad I thought about that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a great idea. Thanks for that coaching.
Yeah.
Wow. You just hit them with a loaded, leading question. Exactly. So I always know when a manager is closing, and that's what it is. They're closing, not coaching.
Yeah.
They're looking to drive that person to where they want to be, which bleeds into that other area of it being attached to the outcome, which we'll talk about in a second. Yes. So when a manager says to me, Keith, I had a really hard time coming up with the questions that are going to drive the person to where I want them to be.
Yes.
That's a red flag right there. They're closing. They're not coaching. Yes. Because coaching is not about driving your agenda. Coaching is about the art of creating new possibilities.
Phenomenal. I'm glad that you give that detail. I think that's fantastic, Keith. With that in mind, one of the people on watching us is asking, when you work with your own clients, are you working with them one-on-one, or are there other formats that your firm provides?
So there's really 4 quadrants of what we do. We do our seller coach program, which we'll talk about in a minute, which is the evolution of selling.
Yes.
Heard it from me first, heard it on this broadcast first. Then there's the leadership transformation coaching. Then there's, based on my last book, Own Your Day, which is about personal productivity and bringing more harmony and significance in your life. Developing your personal navigation system, your vision, your mission statement, your personal. So you're clear with the direction you're going every day. And then there's the one-on-one coaching that we do, whether it's for business owners, entrepreneurs, executives, CEOs, frontline managers, sales managers, non-sales managers, salespeople. And that's something that we do on an individual basis with my team of great coaches.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for covering that.
Of course.
And now we'll jump into your current point of view now with the seller coach concept. I'd love for people to hear that from you. And how do you compare it to Insight Sales as well?
Mm-hmm. There are so many different sales methodologies and frameworks, as you know, Ash.
Yes.
And in my 30 years of coaching and developing leaders and salespeople, and I have a lot of colleagues, they write books, and God bless them. I'll read a lot of these books, just because, someone wanted feedback. And
yes,
not that there's not good content and not that there's some unique aspects in their book, but essentially it's the last 30, 50, 100 years.
Yes.
Sales training really hasn't evolved at all.
Yeah.
It's just been repackaged over and over again. And I know that because when I speak to clients and I ask them, if you've ever done sales training, my next question is, well, what was your ROI from it?
Yes.
Well, actually, it's kind of the flavor of the month. I don't know if everyone's really engaged in it. Well, there's a reason for that. Number one, they're working on traditional old school model of thinking and doing. Number two, the manager's not coaching. So, training doesn't develop sales champions. Managers do through their coaching, consistent coaching.
Yes.
So over the years of looking at this and working with salespeople, it was natural for me to just, coach. And of course, I wear a lot of different hats. I'm a coach, I'm an advisor, I'm an accountability partner, I'm a consigliere, I'm a cheerleader. I'm all those things wrapped into one. Subject matter expert, which is very rare to find that out there. And when I'm working with managers and I'm working with sellers, the sellers, what do? Look at the manager. The manager is doing the same thing their sellers are doing, because the manager, chances are, was never trained how to be a leader or a coach.
Yes.
It's the old adage of, oh, Keith, I'm sure you never heard this before, but we basically took our top performer and we made them a manager. Did he train them? Did he develop them? Oh, no. We just put him in the management position.
Yes.
And then they wonder why the manager defaults, to your point, to what they know, which is how to sell and how to close and what they know. So they coach in their own image.
You've seen it work, yeah.
So now with what I've seen over the years, I have developed an evolutionary model based on my coaching framework for leaders. Yes. And the program and I would say imminent book that I'm going to write, but I don't want to be held accountable for that. I'd love to write it. Maybe it'll be an ebook.
Yes.
Is called The Seller Coach.
Yes.
And this, listen, people, you're hearing this for the first time. If you heard it from someone else, they stole it from me, because this is what I created. And you will see more and more the evolution of selling is to become a great coach.
For your clients.
Seller coach. For your clients, for your prospects.
Yeah.
So if you think about some of the things we covered, why is that so critical? Well, you take a salesperson, they get on the phone or they're face to face with a customer. What are they focused on?
Yeah, they want to basically kind of lead them to the solution that they are trying to sell.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, versus the discovery process.
Yes, and even if they do maybe ask a couple of good questions,
yes,
they don't know what to do with that information.
Yeah.
And they'll still just keep driving their agenda because they're like this.
Yeah.
I need a sale. I need to get here. So
Yeah.
what winds up happening is salespeople wind up making the sales process all about them.
Yes.
What I have to gain, what I have to lose if I don't close more business.
Yes.
When in actuality, if you think about it, in the most simplistic terms, in any sales relationship, you have the salesperson and the customer.
Yes.
Who's the sales process about?
Right, exactly. So the customer, right. Yeah.
Who's the salesperson make it about? Me.
Yes.
And then they wonder why there's resistance and why they're not creating any new possibilities with their prospects and customers. And if you remember what I said before, coaching is the art of creating possibility, but selling is also the art of creating possibility. You're not creating possibilities, and this is a good tie into what you mentioned before about detaching from the outcome. Yes. You're not creating new possibilities if you're attached to the outcome. And I'll say that a couple of different ways. That's hooked on your own agenda, driving your own agenda, pushing what you want, your expectation.
Yes, exactly.
If you're a coach as a manager or a coach as a salesperson, people will resist.
Yes.
So, and this might sound strange, but when salespeople can actually detach from the outcome and make it about the customer and the prospect, it's amazing what they can create from that place of collaboration and creating possibilities that either the customer or the salesperson didn't even see. But to tell a salesperson, hey, listen, man, when you go out and you're on the phone or you're making a call, just detach from the outcome. Make it about them. And they'll look at me like, are you crazy? I got numbers to hit. Numbers are a byproduct.
Yes. Yes.
So just to get a little cerebral, 3 points of time, past, present, and future.
Yes.
If you're hooked on the agenda, you're in the future. Most leaders and salespeople are very result driven.
Correct.
It's an occupational hazard. Everyone, literally every one of my clients, you develop a culture. If there's a target on your back, you're result driven.
Feeling in his head. Yeah.
Absolutely. So what if you're result driven, you're always focused on what's next. The shift is you need to focus on what's now.
Yes.
Because, and here's an interesting saying, being present drives revenue.
Very interesting. Yes.
So if you're a future focused individual, you're focused on the outcome. Well, wait a second. Selling is the art of creating possibility. What can't you be doing? Creation happens in the moment.
That's right.
Active listening happens in the moment. Developing value happens in the moment.
Trusted advisor.
All those things happen in the moment. Creating possibility, the art of creation and of possibilities all happens in the present. It doesn't happen in the future, and it doesn't happen in the past.
Absolutely.
So if you think about this from the inner game, it's very difficult to coach and deliver more value and create new possibilities, whether you're a salesperson or a leader.
Yes.
If you're focused on what's next, because you're not listening, you're not asking the right questions, and you're just pushing what you want.
Exactly. So I think what you're saying in a lot of ways, even if it's a seller or a sales manager, there's a lot of sort of self-managing yourself in that moment to make sure you get the results, and then you'll be happily surprised.
Yeah, and the results are a byproduct of honoring the process. So it's really making a shift. And I'm not saying stop being result driven, but the pendulum of extremity is here. We need to shift it so it's back here. So shifting from being super result driven to becoming more process driven.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because if you're result driven, which is your thinking, think about the questions you're going to ask when you're coaching.
Yes.
What are you going to close this month? How many calls did you make? How many meetings do you have? Is your forecast and your pipeline accurate? Those are all result driven. Are they important? Absolutely. Yes. But they're missing out on coaching the process. You don't coach the result. You coach the process. The result is a byproduct. Exactly. So now if you shift your thinking to coaching the process, notice what happens to how you communicate. You're going to ask process-driven questions. Exactly. So how did you handle that situation? Walk me through the conversation you had with that customer.
Yes.
What did it sound like? You know, when they hit you with that objection, how did you respond? How can you respond in a different way the next time that would get you a better result? What's the process you're going to take in order to achieve this goal? Yes. How can you handle it differently the next time? Those are all about process and the collaboration of co-creating something new.
Absolutely. We're getting close to closure, but I'd love for you, because somebody's asking here, I know in your book, Own Your Day, you're talking to sellers primarily, I believe.
Sales leaders, salespeople, sales managers. Yes.
Perfect. So I'd love for you maybe just give us a few nuggets for that sales manager listening in. How can they own their day and achieve the maximum output from that day?
I'll give you the short answer.
Yeah.
If you want a great life, schedule one.
Yes.
Own your day, own your life. All roads go back to time and self-management. So I'll never forget, I was doing a panel discussion. It was for WCBS and going years ago. And I asked probably 1,000 people in the audience. I asked them, I said, how many of you have heard the phrase time is money? Every hand goes up.
Yes.
How many of you manage your time like your money? Not one hand went up.
Not as many, yeah.
Because not one. And when I said it, okay, you manage your money. You either, put it in a bank, you manage it yourself, you have a money manager, a stockbroker, financial planner, keep it under your pillow, whatever you do, you manage your money.
Yes.
Your routine is the bank that you protect your time. So all roads go back to a routine. Yes. So when I ask managers, do you have a routine that basically illustrates all of the activities that you need to engage in that will move you forward to your goals while keeping your life in balance and harmony?
Yes.
I think I could count on maybe two hands over 30 years how many managers and leaders have a highly effective routine.
Yes.
They don't. So if you think of a wide funnel, in order to create that routine, it starts with creating your personal vision.
Yes.
And then from there, you uncover your values and your priorities. And then from there, you can create value-based goals.
Yes.
And then from there, as the funnel gets narrower, now you can create a strategy for those goals. Yes. And now the strategy bleeds into action. Where does the action live? In your routine. Exactly. So it's very simple. You follow your routine, you hit your goals.
Awesome, Keith. I think it's just phenomenal. You touched on a lot of valuable things for managers, as well as for AMs who are listening in and trying to make sure that they even can manage up. And I'd love for them to go and download the Coach Up ebook that you mentioned. Would love to then kind of recap everything with giving people information on how they can reach out to you and your organization. What would be the best thing for them to do?
A couple of things. They can go to coachquest.com, and at the bottom of the page, there's a contact us form. They can fill it out. It'll go to my director of client engagement, and then it'll get forwarded right to me, and I'm happy to respond personally. Or they could just send a personal email to info at coachquest.com.
Fantastic, Keith. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, and it fascinates me that, as you said, your business is always evolving. You're really adapting based on your customer conversations and what you're seeing in the field itself, and the amount of firsthand experience you have with sales managers and leaders around the world. It's been a pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much, Keith, for joining us.
Pleasure is mine. I would just like to leave your audience with one final thought. How do you change a culture? How do you transform talent? One person at a time. Yeah. One conversation at a time. If your salespeople evolve into coaches, your leaders evolve into coaches, everyone's speaking the same language, peers are coaching each other, managers are coaching their directs are coaching their managers. That's how you shift and create an incredible coaching culture. So Thank you, Ash, for having me, and I wish everyone extreme success.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Keith. And I want to encourage everyone again to go to top1percentsellersacademy.com, all spelled out, and check out all the resources that are there. This webinar will be posted in the membership area, and also check out the Top 1% Sellers podcast on iTunes, as well as also on the C-Suite Radio. Thanks again, Keith. We'll talk soon. Thank you so much.
You.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye, everyone.